Hello. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and giving up your time in exam term. And again, welcome to the Cambridge Union, especially to those who are non-members. We are so excited to welcome you here for an important panel discussion on the role of religion in the UK today. I am joined by some incredible guests and student speakers giving up their exam term time. If we could all go around introducing ourselves, about who we are, what we do, that would be great. So we'll start this way. After you, just introduce yourself.
Oh. Yeah, hello. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Introduction about myself. I'm a Buddhist. I'm president of the Buddhist Society in London. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a Jungian analyst. And I'm very interested in religion, particularly the kind of core of religion, not so much with the trappings, that go around it. But I have a great interest in religion, what it does to people and how it can transform people. I know that identity comes up in this discussion, and maybe I won't take up any more time talking about myself, but later on we can talk about the problem of identity.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Gavriel. I'm currently the co-president of the Cambridge University Jewish Society. I am a modern Orthodox Jew. My family originally comes from Germany, so we're very European identity. My father was a rabbi growing up, so that created quite a religious household. And everything that I do is motivated by my parents and grandparents who are really involved in the community. You'll hear a lot about why I think the Jewish community is so important, but that really inspires me on a day-to-day basis and my role at JSOC now.
Hi, my name is Sanjana and I'm a second-year historian at Magdalen College, and I'm talking on behalf of Hinduism, I guess, and it's been a very important part of my life and my identity, and I'm kind of excited to talk about it on this panel, and yeah.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm a OPINDERJIT called TAKHAR, a Sikh. My parents are originally from Punjab in India. I'm also the president of the Subject Association, which is Theology and Religious Studies in Higher Education. So that's the umbrella body for all kind of, teaching about theology, study of religion or religious education, whatever we want to call it, in the UK. I also, I'm an associate professor of Sikh Studies, and I also direct the Centre for Sikh and Punjabi Studies, which is the only academic centre of its kind in Europe. So yeah, looking forward to conversations.
Cool. I'm Toby. The boring stats is that I go to Corpus Christi, I'm a historian, and I'm in my second year. Most exciting thing about me, I think, maybe you think that this just reflects on me as a really boring person, but it's that I follow Jesus. I became a Christian at some point in the first 15 or so years of my life, and since then I've been following him, and that's been a big part of my life.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do you want to keep one mic down that way? That was easier. So the first question I have for all of you is, how do you see the role of religion in the UK today? You can talk more generally about religion in its wider definition, or as well as how your own specific religion, how that reflects in society in the UK today.
How long do we have for the question?
45 minutes to an hour for the whole thing. 45 minutes to an hour for the whole thing.
Okay, but for each a little bit.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah. The role of religion in the UK. Well, this is a Christian country, but all the churches are empty, and they're getting emptier as time goes on. But what is interesting is that the rise of what they call spirituality, or people who are interested in spiritual values, is going up. This is the same in America as well. I would say, though, that religion has a very, very important role for the diaspora. I work quite a lot with the Hindu community, with the Buddhist community, from all parts of Southeast Asia and from China and from Tibet, from Japan and Korea. And people who are first generation who are here in the UK, religion is incredibly important. It gives them a sense of belonging, gives them a sense of community. One of the problems I find with the older people is they find their children are drifting off into the general sort of, culture of the UK, which is a good thing in a way, a very good thing, because it means they somehow don't need the religion to hold on to feel safe. They don't need that. But also, there's a certain loss of value when that happens as well. But the role of religion, I think one of the great pities is that the heart of religion is lost. With the secularization of religion throughout society, the real values at the core of religion have been disposed of, and forgotten largely, because the practices aren't carried out anymore. In order to really experience what's at the heart of the human being, you have to practice. Not just ritual, but the actual insight and awareness that comes from exploring what's really going on in yourself at the deepest level, and to be able to integrate that into your life. And those things are chucked out with the abandonment of religion. That seems to be a great shame. And I think if we, as a culture, are going to grow as a culture and become a mature society, we need to retain those values, and we need to find probably some other way of doing it than we're attempting to do it now. Because what's actually happens is with the many religions, there's conflict between them. And this conflict creates problems, and it's not what religion is actually about. The real heart of religion is that there are no others, there's no people to be in conflict with, essentially. You can abandon your identity, but retain the values. We can probably talk about that a bit later. But anyway.
Sure. So you mentioned that people have basically stopped going to church. I think something that we often forget about religion is religion-based charities. In the last 10 years, there have been 9,000 new religious designated charities that have been established in the UK. I think that points towards sort of an evolution as to how we do practice. I can speak specifically with the Jewish community, has become increasingly denominational in this country. There are various new groups from Reform Judaism all the way to Orthodox Judaism. But one thing that we've all prioritized, perhaps more than traditional practices of keeping the Sabbath and keeping kosher, is this sort of identity of tikkun olam. And a lot of, I think all our faiths really subscribe to this identity. Tikkun olam literally means healing the world. And I think the development of new charities that are religiously motivated at such an unprecedented scale really shows that there is a future for how religion can play a role in this country. And specifically on the Judaism level, we represent 0.46% of the total population of the UK. There are just 270,000 Jews in England. And it feels at times like there are a lot more. Maybe that's just me because I grew up in a really Jewish community. But I think that as our religion grows, and I think as all of our religions grow, we maybe don't become more devout in our faith, but we can certainly have more of an impact. And I think that all of us healing the world in our own individual way is the best place to start in England and the UK.
I agree with what both of you said, that religion in the UK, especially as a Hindu, like the diaspora, I think it's becoming an increasing part of, like, from my generation, their identity. I know coming to uni, one of the first things I did was see if there was a Hindu society and, find where, I could join the Hindu society. And I think while formal institutions like temples and churches may be losing, their the number of visitors, that doesn't necessarily mean that the role of religion is coming down from its peak. I think it's just evolving into something else, and it means something else, and it's being practiced in different ways. And I think that says a lot more about how people view their identity as maybe like a British citizen. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to forget your religion, but if anything, your religious identity becomes a part of who you are as a British citizen. And I think that's like one of the things that I was taught in school. Like, one of the values is that we're all so different, but yet we, the common thing that we have is where we're from and where we live. And I think that's something that That's how religion has changed in my eyes and how I grew up in the UK. And yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so in response to what's already been said on the panel, I would say that religion is an absolutely vital part of British society. But very often, I feel that the very word religion does cause some issues when it comes to identities. So, for example, I'm from the Sikh faith, which originates in India. And in India, we have no equivalent for the word religion. We do have dharam, which means a way of life. So, following on from what the other speakers have said, being a Sikh in Britain, being born in this country, I very comfortably use the identity of being a British Sikh. But that does not mean that I forget about my Indian identity as well. So, you know, for example, with my own children, I tell them, if somebody asks you, where are you from, where are you really from, don't shy away from it, because that is your opportunity to actually talk about the rich cultural history that you carry with it. And I really do feel that we need to really emphasize more through schools as well, the importance of religion as a very kind of cohesive element of British society. The more that we try and get away from, one of the British values, for example, states the word tolerance towards others. The quicker that we get away from that term tolerance and completely obliterate it when we're learning about other people's religions and replace it for respect, the better society will be in terms of how we interact with each other. You know, religion is something that or faith and belief is something that we just can't escape. You know, we go to the supermarket, the labeling of food, for example. We go to a busy street, the way people dress, the languages they speak, you know, the kind of different ethnicities we see around this. All of this means that Britain is very much welcoming of different beliefs and practices. So as a Sikh, there has been so many kind of amendments to law in order to allow an initiated Sikh to be able to wear their kirpan, you know, which very often is wrongly interpreted as a sword or a dagger or a knife. But the more that we raise awareness of these issues through understanding and respect, the more we'll be able to understand each other as well.
Cool. I'd like to maybe push back against this idea that Christianity is on the decline. I think we definitely have churches where the pews are emptying. We also have churches where people are coming to know Christ. I go to a church where about 12 or more people on one day, on Easter Sunday, gave their lives to Christ and became Christians. St. Aldate's, in the other place, a church in Oxford, they had a service the other week where so many people became Christians that they lost count. So I don't think it's something that is on the retreat in the way that we're maybe led to think. And I think one other thing is that it's very easy to conflate cultural Christianity and what we could call like religion, and Christianity in the form of like putting your trust in Christ and following him. And actually the Bible only really uses the term religion in relation to what happens after you've put your faith in Christ, what happens after you've become a Christian. So I think ultimately, if there's one big thing to kind of come away from, it's that Christianity is not primarily a set of things you do or cultural practices you adhere to. It's first and foremost at its centre about what Jesus has done, about who God is, about following him, rather than any kind of cultural or religious practice as such.
Thank you so much for all of your answers. I'm already feeling so informed by this discussion. On a more personal level, how do you feel how important do you think religion is to your own identity? How much has it shaped you, the communities around you, where you surround yourself? And as well as the people of the same religion as you, how do you see it shaping their own life? Of course, it's hard for one individual, as yourselves, to represent a full religion, but just in your own personal lives and the people around you, how influential has religion been? How important is your religion to your own life?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's crucial, absolutely crucial to my life, yeah. And the practices that I do are very important to me They give me great insight. They increase awareness and increase feelings of friendliness to people and reduce my sense of feelings of aggression and violence towards others. They make me more generous, kinder to people, and gives me a great deal of insight. Because I work in psychiatry, it's very important to me to have insight into other people's feelings, particularly to have the right kind of compassion. I don't mean sentimentality, but I mean being able to feel what other people feel. That's really crucial to me. It doesn't give me a sense of identity. In fact, it does the reverse. It gives me the capacity to lose my sense of identity completely without anxiety. Because really, for many people, particularly young people, to lose your identity is a very frightening experience because you don't know what to hold on to. So you have this sense of rising anxiety and almost panic. I get a lot of patients like that, particularly adolescents and young adults. But the thing is, you've got to let go of your anxiety, of your sort of nominal personality, who you think you are. Be able to lose that in living experience, and that's something which religion does to me. My own religion gives me the capacity to become at one with what I'm doing and with other people, to be effective in what I do, to be able to think clearly, to be able to function in many different roles in one day. Today I was seeing patients 8 o'clock in the morning, then I had to do some Zoom stuff, and for it all to smoothly flow without any sense of different personalities and how do I fit in here or there. So I think a good religion, good spiritual practice gives you that, gives you the capacity to forget yourself, to lose yourself, and also, importantly, to be able to abandon the trappings of religion. Doesn't mean you give up the rituals, they're what you do, but to give up all the kind of things that distinguish you from other people, to feel free to do that. In fact, the more you do that, to feel more yourself, more at home in the world, more at one with the world, more at one with other people.
So on a personal level, Judaism has a tremendous impact on me on a daily basis. It inspires me to pray 3 times a day. It changes what I eat, what I can and can't eat, what I can and can't do on different days of the week. And I'm very identifiably Jewish. I wear a skull cap on my head, and that means if anyone on the street can identify me as Jewish. So it makes me very conscious of how I behave in public and in private. On a different level, though, and this is something that we touched on over here, Judaism isn't necessarily a religion. I think the way that most Jews would define themselves is part of a general people. Jews practice very, very differently. I practice very, very differently to my siblings, let alone a Jew who comes from Syria or Iran, let alone a Jew who comes from America. So I think the way that Judaism impacts everyone's identity is very, very varied. But what I can say is that it does impact all of us in a different way. I would find it difficult to find a single Jew in the world who doesn't in some way know that he or she is Jewish, know that their identity is impacted. And I think it's a shame that so often we are reminded that even if we reject our Judaism, we could be completely secular, but we're still reminded of our Judaism. I think there's a really nice story which my grandfather used to tell me growing up. The chief rabbi of this country after the Holocaust went around to several different countries in Europe, several different Christian orphanages, and he started reciting the Shema in front of all of these children. The Shema is the most important sentence in the entire Old Testament to many. And it's something that we all know from growing up. I don't remember a day when I didn't know the Shema. And he starts saying the Shema, and these children who have been completely led astray because of the atrocities of the 1940s, who have no connection to their Judaism whatsoever, wouldn't know their parents, every single one of them was able to recite the end of the Shema. And I think that's what's really powerful about Judaism, is it's so ingrained in us all that I do still have something in common with someone from Iran and someone from Syria and someone from America who is also Jewish. And that's how it identifies how I situate myself in the world, who I choose to make friends with, and how I'm able to be part of such a diverse community, both Jewish community and a UK community.
I think being Hindu and just, was that the question? Like, what does it, how does it, I think I grew up in a very culturally Hindu family, and my parents were very religious, but they were religious because of tradition, not because of their own reason and their own choice, it seemed. And growing up, I realized that the role that I wanted my religion to play in my life didn't just have to be tradition. It could be a lot more than that. And that's when I started exploring the spirituality side of Hinduism. And in a broader sense, that helped me appreciate the spirituality of faiths all around me. I think one of the best things about being religious is that you hold so much faith so close to your heart, and you have so much belief in everything in the world and people. And I think that's a very amazing quality to have, where you look into the world and you say, I believe in not just you, but the universe. And I think that has helped me tremendously in the difficult times of my life, the more light-hearted times of my life, but also given me a wider appreciation of the spirituality that also other religions have. And sometimes I come across these verses from the Bible which really touch my heart. Hear stories from the Hadith which are amazing, and you hear these myths and legends of not just religions being practiced today, but in a weird way, even like the Greek religions, and reading stories of Zeus and Hercules, and all of these things are they provide insight into how people have imagined the universe and the world, and how all of this has shaped the way that humans interact with each other and how they interact with the world. And I think that is the best thing about being religious, is you have that sense of faith in not just everyone else, but also, at the end of the day, yourself and your identity. And yeah.
Thank you. So I would echo what's already been said about the fact that faith gives you a sense of belonging to a particular community. So at any one point in time, we all have multiple identities. But for me, being a Sikh, following the Sikh faith, which is referred to as Sikhi rather than an ism, very much determines what I do from the moment that I get up with reciting the Mool Mantar, the very first prayer of the day, to the moment that I go to sleep by reciting the Kirtan Sahila, which is the prayer that a Sikh would recite before you go to sleep. So I've never kind of seen what I do, what I feel outside of the Sikh lens. So from as young as I can remember, I've always worn akara, which is this steel bracelet. And what this symbolises is that the divine it's continuous, it's eternal. And as a Sikh, we believe that divine actually resides within each and every one of us, which is where the concept of equality is very important in the Sikh faith. So as a female, it's my faith that very much empowers me to be able to do absolutely anything I want. So Sikhi, the faith, the teachings, there is nowhere in the Sikh faith that being a female prevents you from doing absolutely anything. And we can see this played out, in so many different forums around us. The concept of equality is core to the Sikh faith. During COVID, we saw so many Sikhs, so many organisations putting out food banks, etc., and then also doing service to the community through supplying oxygen as well, when that was an all-time low, especially in India. And so in Sikhi, for me, what kind of really draws me constantly to Sikhi is the fact that Waheguru, which is the name that we use to refer to the divine, never makes you feel as if you are ever alone, because Waheguru, this divine, is constantly around me, and it's constantly within me as well. So as a Sikh, we don't believe that this divine, this Waheguru, is out there. We don't look for Waheguru, we experience Waheguru through meditation and through a mystical, a spiritual experience. So for that reason, 6, we don't really adhere to the concept of a God as in a G-O-D, because that very much kind of, conjures up this image of a male. But in Sikhi, we believe that the divine is actually formless. It's gender-free, and it's that energy, it's that light that is referred to as that light that is within all of us. And that leads to the concept that's known as Chardi Kala, which means forever in high spirits. If the divine is constantly around you, within you, it's that kind of, that finding that divine that constantly keeps one in high spirits.
I think to really understand like Christian identity and just anything about Christianity, I think you need to kind of grasp what's at the center of Christianity, and that is the gospel, which literally means the good news. And I'll just try and briefly explain. It's basically the starting point of it is that God has this insane love for every human he's created, and he's created every human for a relationship with him. And then from that, God has done 2 things, he offers 2 things. One is saving us from something, and the second is saving us for something. And if you think about what he saved us from, it's quite uncomfortable. But if you would think about every wrong thing that you've done, if I would think about every wrong thing that I'd done, I genuinely don't think I'd be able to take it. Because when I actually stop and think, I'm like, wow, I've caused so much hurt to other people. I've really broken this world that God created. God loves those people that I've hurt. And then when I start to think about it, if God is perfect in every way, he's also perfect as a judge, he's perfect in his justice, which means that that's a justice that in theory I should have to face. But God's response, because he has made us for a relationship with him, because his love is just unspeakably amazing, is that he humbled himself to become a human in Jesus and took the punishment for us on the cross, so that we don't actually have to face the justice, the punishment that we deserve for what we've done. And we can essentially have absolute freedom. And he's saved us from something that we really don't want to face, but he's also saved us for something. And that's exactly what we were made for. We were made for relationship with him. And if we think about God being the source of all goodness, all joy, all life, all light, all hope, then when we are fully in relationship with him, all of the pain and sorrows and suffering of this world just fades away. The Bible talks about God as a giver of all good gifts. If you've had, good gifts on earth, then think about how good it will be when, you get to enjoy a relationship with him. So ultimately, there's no way you can, as a Christian, serve a God who didn't just lower himself to become a human, but suffered death for us, and only have that as something which is a hobby on the weekend, or only have that as something which is a society you occasionally go along to. That's something that changes your life. And I think the beautiful thing about it is that it's not something which is exclusive. Jesus' invitation is for all, and God has made everyone in his image for relationship with him. So similarly, there's this profound equality, but there's, I think, even greater than that, just this profound freedom, that having that identity as someone that God has personally died to save, has intimately made, that identity just trumps anything else. Nothing compares to that.
Thank you so much, everybody. So obviously, what is clearly come across to me is how important religion is to your own identity. And one thing I wanted to ask is, do you find that how central it is to your life, do you find that conflicts with other aspects of your identity, whether that be social aspects of your identity, the way you behave in society in a certain way? Do you find that that's conflictual with how central your religious identity is?
Well, I think your question is really about your emotions, isn't it? About the kind of emotions you get when you're with other people, isn't it? That's at the core of it. And, religion, and I think any kind of really deep religion that's looking at the core of the human heart, must look at that feeling of wanting to push somebody away, or feelings of aggression, feelings of wanting to take things from them that you want. You know, all those kind of feelings are absolutely crucial for us to recognize in ourselves. I mean, there are kind of people who look at you and you see they're just summing you up, and they probably want to take something from you, or they want to grab hold of you and do all sorts of things to you, or else they want to be your friend, or else they're just looking at you, you know, and you can look at them and you can be very close to them just by that exchange, you know, that kind of, and that's an exchange without emotion, and that's something which we need to learn how to do. Most people can't do that. They have an emotional reaction to the other person. When that goes and disappears, you just see people as they are. And then you can skillfully do something, or the natural response is to do something which is appropriate at that moment. And I think that's at the heart of all religions, actually, but it's kind of lost in its institutionalization, in the language that goes with it, and the dogma, and the kind of the false identity that's associated with I being of this religion and you being of that religion, or I being this kind of person, that I'm better than you in one way, or I'm inferior to you, or that you've got qualities that I don't have. Judging and comparing, that incessant judging and comparing that goes on in people's minds. And that judging and comparing also, which is a mental thing, has a concomitant in your emotions, which is liking and disliking. Feeling of liking and disliking, wanting something that that person's got, feeling envy maybe towards them, all sorts of weird stuff going on under the surface. A real religion allows the heart to become very quiet and allows you to see people as they are without any kind of personal reflection in it. It's just as it is. That stillness of the heart. And, you know, that's what I think is at the bottom of all people, not just in religion, but that's actually what we're capable of, naturally. But when fear arises, then all that stops, or that whole thing is broken up. That sense of unity with the world and with other people is shattered in one's own anxiety and one's sense of being little and small in a vast universe. But religion, you know, a real religion will make one part of that universe, so there isn't another that one is looking at. So I think constantly being aware of that dichotomy between me as an individual, as a separate person, and this outer world, and the fact that I'm not actually separate, I'm at one with it all the time, I find very interesting.
So for me, I'm very aware of the conflict between my religion, my people, and the countries that we all live in. I think growing up, every summer I'd go on a Jewish summer camp, and the question would always be posed, are you a British Jew or a Jewish Briton? And that's always a question I never had an answer to, because I frankly don't know what it means. But over time, my identity, of which I identify with more, has changed. I did not go to a faith school, and I made lots of friends who subscribe to lots of different religions from there. But frankly, the only people who I still am in contact with are my Jewish friends. So one might say that I am a lot more in tune with my Jewish identity than my British identity. Certainly at Cambridge, it's felt increasingly that way. I'm in my first year, which means that, you know, the course of the last 6-7 months have meant that the community where I feel safest in this environment is the Jewish community. But at the same time, I recognise that it is really important that we all subscribe to a British identity as well. I really do think they can coexist. I think after the Holocaust, a lot of my older family members will tell you this, they felt increasingly disassociated with their home countries. Certainly my great-grandparents who left Germany didn't identify themselves as German Jews, and would probably be hesitant to identify themselves as American Jews. That's where it comes from, that, you know, there's such a stigma against marrying someone who is not Jewish within our community. And it's to preserve who we are as a people, which I think is very valid. But I hope that as we grow and as we sort of become more connected as humans and as interfaith relations hopefully increase and become as though we are all just in the same part of one community, then that I no longer will be asked, am I a Jewish Briton or am I a British Jew? Because the question will no longer be relevant. Because I am Jewish and British, and those identities can exist as one. And I really hope that we can all feel that way sometime soon.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So do you find that your religious identity can conflict with how you present yourself in society and how socially you ought to present yourself and how religiously you want to present yourself?
I really like that question because it reminds me of this story that my mum used to tell me where there were these two children and they were having this really intense argument, and the first child was saying that my mum is the best mum, she makes the best food, and the second child was like, no, your mum is not the best, my mum is the best and she makes the best food. And there was this third person who came into the argument and was like, your mum is the best for you. And to the second child, your mum is also the best for you. And I think that is a great way of looking at how identity can conflict with other identities, but also it can make you understand that just because I have a certain belief and I have a certain way that I do things, that doesn't necessarily mean that the way that someone else does it and the way that someone else presents their identity is wrong. It's just different to me. And different isn't bad, different is good. Because that means that when I go out into the world and interact with different people, people who are different to me, different faiths, different ethnicities and backgrounds, I can learn to appreciate their differences and maybe take lessons from them that I didn't necessarily or couldn't necessarily take from my own faith or my own background. And I think when you ask the question, does my identity give bring me conflict when it comes to other people's identities or social situations, I think it's a matter of perception and how you view what your identity contributes to how you treat people. And I think at the end of the day, if the way you're treating people is because you you disagree with them and you hold that emotion with you, then I think that is something that that's the reason for conflict. And I think the more you learn to accept that people's differences are not necessarily a negative thing, but a positive contribution to society and also to your own evolution as just a person, then I think, the world can be a much safer and better place for everyone.
So for me, my multiple identities actually define who I am as an individual. So being born in this country makes me British. Following the Sikh faith gives me a Sikh identity. And my parents being from India makes me ethnically Indian. So these are identities that I very much comfortably sit in at any given time. So for example, even though I've never lived in India for a long period of time, anything that's happening there will ultimately affect me anyway. In the same way as being British, anything that happens in this country will affect me. So in terms of kind of balancing my Sikh faith with my British identity, I've never had a problem with that. In the Sikh faith, there are there is much diversity in the Sikh faith, which is quite contrary to stereotypical representations of the Sikhs in textbooks. We don't all believe and practice the same. So, for example, I'm not an initiated Sikh, which means that if I want to cut my hair, I can cut my hair. However, there are other Sikhs who would wear a turban, who would have a long beard, because they are initiated and therefore they do not cut their hair. So if I felt that at one point, later on in my life, I don't feel ready for it yet, but maybe, whenever I do feel ready for it, I feel that society itself will not be a hindrance. British society will not be an hindrance in any of that, because as a community, we've worked hard to raise awareness of what the turban, for example, means to a Sikh. And also, as I said earlier on, Sikhi is not an ism. It's not something that just can be confined to the concepts of how we define a religion. Sikhi is a way of life. It's about the lived experience. And so for me, because I'm not an initiated Sikh, I don't have kind of a whole list of do's and don'ts, which very much makes me free to kind of believe and practice my faith in the way that I want it to be. So the Sikh faith, we don't have kind of an ordained or a laity. We have no concepts of kind of priests or nuns, which means that everybody is regarded on the same level, which therefore means that I can take from Sikhi what I feel comfortable with and park the rest until a time when I am ready to take initiation and kind of follow the more of the do's and the don'ts that are associated with Sikhi.
Thank you. Off the back of what I said on the last round, it's an identity which you can probably guess is a pretty great one. Like probably doesn't get much better than being a child of God and then having like relationship with Him. And so there can be a lot of temptations, I think, in the culture around us to try and find our identity and value in things which are actually like less valuable, which are kind of lesser identities. So for example, I don't know, most of us had this. Maybe this is just me because I come from an area of the country and a school where not many people get into Cambridge. Whenever I go back home, it's like, oh, you go to Cambridge, like you're a Cambridge student. And it's very easy to want to assimilate that into your identity because it's impressive. But it's not a very stable identity when you go to a university that everyone's a Cambridge student at. It doesn't make you very special. And so I just use that as an example. There are a lot of like kind of identities that we can be tempted to develop for ourselves, which Christians are not immune to, which are kind of based on our own achievements or our own efforts to try and cast an image. And actually, we don't need to do that. Like we don't need to keep on striving to try and be perfect, striving to try and be the most impressive person we can be, because like God's already says that we're valued. God already says you're deeply loved, and if that's what God thinks about me, then I don't really mind what other people think about me. Like those identities don't mean anything really, which is so freeing.
Thank you so much again. I've just noticed the time, so I think we have time for one more question. And just one thing I want to end on, just with it being the last question, is what is one thing that you want people to take away today about your religion and the role it plays to you and in society, or just something about the religion itself?
To take away about religion, I think religion should be about forgetting one's identity. There is a saying in St. Paul, walk by faith, not by vision. You need to feel comfortable in yourself, at home in yourself, and then you can face the world without fear, without anxiety, without aggression, and with warmth and friendliness to everyone. I'm using a Christian thing, but it's also in Buddhism, and it's in all the other religions, but it's forgotten. It's forgotten under the veil of all the stuff that goes with it. And that's a great pity. We need to get back to the heart of religion. It doesn't matter what religion you practice, go back into the heart of it. And that's what you'll find in the very center of it. So don't get hung up on all the kind of exterior stuff, but go right into the core of what it's pointing at.
So I touched on it earlier. Jews make up 0.46% of the population of Britain. And I think it's really unfortunate at the moment that Jews now in our communities are more insular than ever. Anti-Semitism is frankly at an all-time high in Jewish students, and Jews in general feel more scared and anxious than ever. I think one important thing to take back is our community is really strong. We have so much to give to the world. And it's really unfortunate that at the moment it feels that not just for Jews, but for most religions, from my perspective, practicing and being open about religion is harder than ever. So certainly on behalf of myself, I would love for you all to take away, just, look out for your fellow man. We're all made in the image of God. And we all have something to give to the world.
I think something that is really something that you hear all the time is the word namaste, and what it means is that I bow down to the God and the divine in you, and I think that that is such a beautiful thing to take away from Hinduism, and in general just a great way to realize how important and how valuable spirituality and the spiritual can be to someone's identity. We are all part of this great thing called the universe, and I think we shouldn't ever forget that we have a purpose and we have a role. Doesn't matter if we know what it is, and if you do, then that's great, but there's a beauty in not knowing, and there's a beauty in knowing, and there's a beauty in everything, and I think that's the main takeaway, just to keep the faith. And yeah.
If there's one thing I'd like you to take away about the Sikh faith, it's the concept of oneness, which runs right through the heart of Sikhi. The concept that we all have the divine within us, therefore we're all equal, and discrimination has no place in society.
I'm going to do a 1A and 1B, if that's okay. Number one is that Christianity, first and foremost, is not a set of rules. It's not a set of cultural practices. It's not about what you do. It's primarily about a person, Jesus, what he's done for us, and the relationship we can have with him, the trust that we can put in him. We can leave our lives in his hands and trust him with them. And B is that Christianity, I think it's one of the unfortunate things that maybe happens when Christianity is heavily institutionalized and permeates a culture like it has in the UK, is people begin to think that it's an exclusive religion or it's a white Western religion. That's just not the case. It started, the first people who believed Christianity were Jews in Palestine. There are more Chinese Christians than there are members of the Communist Party in China. The following Jesus is not something which is exclusive. It's literally for anyone who would believe. And so if anything I've said tonight has struck any interest, or if you're like, Toby, you're talking absolute nonsense, I'd love to chat a bit more with you. And if you're actually quite interested, it just so happens that I'm going to my church's student night right after this. So if you are interested, you're very welcome to join me. But have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you again. And just to back with what Toby said there, is definitely thank you so much for coming, and I hope you all have a great evening. I was just wondering if we could give a round of applause to all of our panelists tonight for giving up their time as well. So yeah, thank you so much for being here and listening to what has been, in my opinion, a great and insightful conversation, and I hope it's something we've all learned today. And I wish you well for Easter and exam term. Yeah, thank you. No worries.